Hello, and welcome to the Westmoreland Museum of American Art's virtual programming. Although we are gathered virtually, we want to continue a practice we began when gathering in person of acknowledgements. The Westmoreland Museum of American Art is situated upon the traditional lands of the Adena, Hopewell, Monongahela, Delaware, Shawnee, and Seneca Cayuga peoples. We honor all of the indigenous nations and their land with great gratitude and acknowledge the genocide and continuous displacement of indigenous peoples. We also acknowledge the enslaved Africans whose labor built this country during the colonial era and beyond. We acknowledge the harm inflicted upon the indigenous communities and people of color across the country, which guides and inspires our work as a museum. We have partnered with interior designer Anthony Allgeier on tonight's event. Tony's going to take us on a journey to rediscover the furniture in the museum's permanent collection in the fourth installment of For the Love of Furniture. Through function, design, architecture, color theory, fashion, and film, Tony discusses why these pieces are important to the permanent collection and how they have been reinterpreted into today's modern designs. After the program, we will be doing a live Q&A with Tony, so you better stay tuned after we watch the program. A little bit about Tony. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Interior Design and a minor in Visual Communications from La Roche University. Tony brings his unique excitement and extensive experience of over 10 years working in interior design, architecture, construction, furniture design, and fabrication to present us with this incredible program. All right, let's meet Tony before we watch the program. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you? Do you like when I talk about you like this?
It's so weird. I was actually on a call last week, and it was with my brother who was introducing me. And it was very strange, especially for him to introduce me because I'm like, you're my brother. So it's crazy. Right. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. So tell us a little bit, sort of like a little preview about what we're going to see in the program.
Sure. So on tonight's program, you're going to learn a whole bunch about basically early America. It was fascinating doing all of this research about the Swell-Front, the federal style Swell-Front sideboard. There's a lot of words and a lot of names for this one, but it is an amazing piece, and I had a ton of fun researching all of this.
That's wonderful. Well, I got to see the program, so I'm really excited for everybody else to see it. So I guess we should let them watch it, huh?
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, everybody stay tuned after you see the program, and we'll do a Q&A, and we'll get to your questions.
I can't wait.
Welcome back, one and all, to another episode of For the Love of Furniture, where together we take a look at all of the furniture on permanent display at the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. My name is Tony Allgeier, and I am your resident designer and lover of furniture. On today's episode, we're going to take a trip back in time to the colonial period in American history, discover more about the ancient styles of this time, and also learn about the gender roles that truly shaped the methodology of architecture and design throughout this time period. All of this content stems from one spectacular piece of furniture on display at the museum. This spiffy federal Swell-Front sideboard, circa 1820, Boston, Massachusetts.
Ooh.
This beautifully crafted sideboard, also known as a buffet, was typically used during its creation in a dining room setting for serving food, displaying dishes, and for storage. So what was happening during the early colonial period in American history? What was the federal style of furniture? And who were some of the key players who shaped this stylistic time in America? Well, for starters, early colonial life was difficult and filled with new struggles that would separate the United States from the rest of the world with new ideas and concepts of government. This led to the American Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783, where Americans in the 13 colonies defeated the British. This gained America independence from the British Crown and established the United States as the first modern constitutional liberal democracy. After the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, the term colonial didn't really fit the mark for describing the independent nation. So designs produced from about 1780 until 1830 are typically described as belonging to the federal style. During those subsequent decades when America was in its infancy, the country was not only defined by its government, but also by its way of life. The decorative arts at this time moved away from the ornate looks of the past, such as the heavily carved and massive look of Rococo pieces, and instead embraced the rising neoclassicism. This time period of colonization in America led to new ideas in ways of living and decor, though this style was only achieved by the wealthiest sectors of early Americans who could afford to build and furnish their homes in this type of style. Originally, it was as much a political statement supporting the new Federalist style of government as it was a design aesthetic. In terms of style, the tendency of the federal period was to move towards an increasingly strict version of classicism, based on sophisticated awareness of the published designs of the greats from the Renaissance and on knowledge of actual classical buildings. Books of detailed measure drawings made at archaeological sites, such as the multi-volume Antiquities of Athens, written in 1762, aided the movement towards neoclassicism.
Off the bat, I do find it very interesting that a country that is just newly developing really looked to the greats to create their own style. But there's a huge reason for that.
The furniture was most sought after in larger cities and port towns along the U.S. Eastern Seaboard. These included Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, and Charleston. All of these were really associated with the federal style of furniture. These towns were home to many, many wealthy people who still had significant ties to Europe and were influenced by European designers. These cities were centers for manufacturing the federal style of furniture. Two English furniture designers and cabinetry makers are credited with bringing federal-style furniture to America through their books. George Hepplewhite's 1788 book, The Cabinet Maker and Upholsterer's Guide, and Thomas Sheridan's The Cabinet Maker and Upholsterer's Drawing Book are considered to be landmark books of the federal furniture movement and responsible for introducing the style to a wider American audience. For this reason, federal furniture is sometimes referred to as Hepplewhite and Sheridan style. Most often, Hepplewhite pieces, especially small tables, chairs, and writing desks, are crafted of mahogany, but they can also be made of mahogany veneer. Mahogany veneer over cherry wood is sometimes referred to as the poor man's mahogany. Hepplewhite's designs also have a more delicate-looking appearance when compared with the earlier Chippendale and Queen Anne furniture that was made during the colonial period. Trademark features of a Hepplewhite style include spade feet, shield back chairs, marquetry, and tambour fronts on case goods. Though Sheridan's work also favored mahogany, there are some differences to keep in mind when distinguishing these two styles under the Federal style umbrella. In contrast to Hepplewhite's shield back with an oval form, Sheridan preferred a square-shaped back when it came to seating. The legs on his pieces, rather than being innovative, followed the traditional round shapes of the past. However, as American cabinetry makers studied both styles, they sometimes mingled them together. Two of the best-known cabinetry makers of this time were Samuel McIntyre and Duncan Phyfe. McIntyre was an architect based in Salem, Massachusetts, who began his career carving figureheads for ships. Houses that he designed for wealthy sea captains and merchants were generally created with simple forms, then ornamented by his carvings both on the interior and the exterior. He often carved ornamental details for other cabinetry makers, making it very unclear whether he even designed complete pieces of furniture. His name is attached to Hepplewhite and Sheridan-inspired furniture with detailed carvings in his particular style. A carved basket of fruit and flowers was a favorite McIntyre decorative motif. Born in Scotland, Duncan Phyfe served an apprenticeship as a cabinet maker in Alabama, New York, and then eventually moved to New York City to establish his successful furniture business around 1792. Although his designs incorporated both Hepplewhite and Sheridan influences, his work took on a unique character that made his name widely known as a leading American designer craftsperson. His early work was very close to Sheridan's model, including productions of tables with a three-legged pedestal base, often with a folding top arranged so that the table could stand against a wall and be opened to make a freestanding dining table. His ornamentation really did vary from simple reading to elaborate carvings. Phyfe's style constantly adapted with the times, turning to imitation of French and related English Regency styles, and then, after 1815, to the French Empire style, as these became known successfully in America. He later developed adaptations to pillar and scroll styles using carved versions of classical columns and S and C-shaped scrolls in the later half of the 1830s. Phyfe was said to have carried out Hepplewhite and Sheridan's neoclassical designs to perfection. His career lasted until he retired in 1847. Regionally, craftspeople began to reinterpret design styles in unique ways. Those in Boston, for example, were experts in the process of inlaid woodwork and the creation of tambour doors in cabinetry pieces. I found this video and I just had to share it. It's so fascinating seeing the intricate, tiny little details that goes into inlay and marquetry. During the Federal period, a wide variety of objects that had previously been imported during the colonial era were now produced locally in the United States. While 1820 is usually noted as the end date to the Federal style, the transition into new styles was gradual. Duncan Phyfe was always ready to adapt to these stylistic changes. In the 1820s and 1830s, American architecture and interior design found a new devotion to Greek models, generating the first of several 19th century revivals of the historic past. Two of the most notable structures that are perfect examples of the Federalistic style include Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, and the White House. Both are luxurious in their opulence, yet understated in their referencing to the ancient forms, architecture, and design. Some of the key architectural details shown in these two structures include semicircular or elliptical fan lights above paneled doors, windows with double-hung sashes, typically shown with 6 panes per sash, cornices emphasized with dentil molding, and windows that were typically symmetrically balanced with a center door. Like the neoclassical furniture of Europe that inspired it, Federal-style furniture looked to classical Greek and Roman designs for its cues. In fact, neoclassical style got its start in Europe after the ruins of Pompeii were excavated, and examples of Roman furniture were discovered. Ancient styles truly shaped the colonial period, especially in the Federal style. The classical traditions of the Greek and Roman civilizations preferred these styles of construction between 1000 BC to 300 AD. The Renaissance in 1450 to 1680 then rediscovered these ancient rules of architecture. These rules were again put into practice in America starting around 1740. The primary elements are based on the structure of a column, where you have a pedestal, column, and entablature. This system is meant to support a porch with roof rafters above, and is a building system that has been perfected over centuries. Two of the best known examples that are still in existence today are the Parthenon and the Pantheon. On closer inspection, you can see on both that there is a split between each stone support above each column. This is because it is a functional system that had to work to hold up these large stones supported above. There are 5 orders of architecture, including Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite. Each order is a detailed system based off of proportions. The 3 main orders that are typically referenced in architecture and design are the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. One idea that came out of these orders is that there is a gender associated with each style of architecture.
This is by far one of my biggest pet peeves of all time. Gendering something that has absolutely no gender. But mathematically and structurally, it does make sense why the Greeks and Romans really did venture into putting into categories male and female dominated roles within an architectural setting. Even though I don't fully agree with it nowadays, I get where they were coming from.
If you look at each order from a mathematical standpoint, you can see that they are broken out based off of a formula, with D being the variable. The Doric order is 1 to 8D, Ionic is 1 to 9D, and Corinthian is 1 to 10D. Ideally, this all stems back to the dimensions of the human body, where proportionally the body can be broken down based off of the size of the human head. The diameter of each column is based off of the human form as well. All of the parts of each system are related to each other and based on one unit, D. This relates all the parts together to create one cohesive structure. The Doric is a more masculine order, showcasing very clean lines and structure. The Ionic order is more feminine and light, and the Corinthian is considered to be a young maid. Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is all based off of Vitruvius's writings of the golden ratio. All of the proportions are related and can be broken down into simple parts to create the whole. One awesome example of this golden ratio can be seen in the Mona Lisa. Let's take a trip back to the Westmoreland Museum of American Art and take a closer look at this amazing Federal-style Swell-Front sideboard. The earliest versions of the sideboard made their appearance in the 18th century, but they gained most of their popularity during the 19th century, as households became prosperous enough to dedicate a room solely to dining. Sideboards were made in a range of decorative styles, and were frequently ornamented with costly veneers and inlays. There are so many key structural elements that make up this sideboard. It is comprised of 6 thin, turned, reeded legs which support the vertical structure of the piece, tying into the horizontal elements of the top and base. The thinner shelving structure creates stability to span a wider distance from opening to opening. A back, door front, and drawers are then added to complete this piece. Oval-shaped brass pools are also featured. The most decorative elements are showcased in the expert inlaying of the wood veneer details, brilliantly and painstakingly crafted on the door and drawer fronts, as well as the veneer facades of the exposed supports. The doors and drawers are inset and flush with the overall structure, creating a smooth face. The subtle curved sides add another technical element of precision and mathematics to ensure the perfect fit. The curve breaks up the angular streamlined nature of this craftsperson's choice of inlay pattern. It also relates the picture-framed oval shapes of the bottle drawer's main top drawer, as well as the oval-shaped hardware. This curve also relates to the tapered reeded legs. Another key feature is the book matching of the applied veneers. This is the process of turning over every other piece of veneer so that the adjacent pieces are opened, like 2 adjacent pages of a book. The veneer joints match and create a mirrored image pattern at the joint line, showcasing continuity of grain. The one area of this sideboard that has me a little confused is the central oval picture-framed inlaid veneer. If we turn this portion 90 degrees counterclockwise, you can see that it matches beautifully to the 2 other oval veneers applied to the bottle drawers. Since everything else is so beautifully symmetrical, and this oval stands alone in the center, from my vantage point, I would have loved to see this portion book matched with the graining radiating out from the center line. Notice the attention to detail where the inlaid lines strategically match up to the door and drawer heights. Overall, this piece is visually stunning. Federal-style furniture is timeless, elegant, classic, and can work with so many different design styles. This kind of furniture takes its inspiration from European designs, but it also is so distinctly American. Even today, Federal-style furniture is still influential for modern furniture designers. In general terms, Federal furniture is wood furniture featuring colored inlays and geometric designs. The Federal period continued in furniture manufacturing until the late 1820s, although the Empire style was also gaining popularity at this time. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of For the Love of Furniture, where we discovered so much more about this amazing Federal-style Swell-Front sideboard. To view this piece and all the other pieces on display at the museum, feel free to schedule your time to take a trip to the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay curious.
Hi.
Hello.
That was really great. I was watching it again and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I missed that part the first time I watched the video. So I'm learning something new every time I watch it.
Good. I'm so glad. Every time I watch it, it's weird doing these now because whenever I started making videos years ago, like even small little videos, I could not listen to my voice. And halfway through this, I was like, I don't even pay attention that it's me anymore. It's so weird. Thanks, virtual world.
Right? Exactly. I'm so used to seeing myself in the virtual world as well that I'm like, I don't even know what I look like as a real person anymore.
No,
I have
right?
no
I know.
concept of my own body.
Same. I know. It's just a headless or headless. It's just a head. That's about it.
Right. All right. Well, let's see. We don't have any questions yet, but I do have some questions prepared. You one thing I observed in the video, you were talking about the golden ratio, and I was like, yeah, I know about the golden ratio.
I never even saw that before. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I got really excited about it. So that was just a little thing I wanted to point out.
I love the golden ratio is so fascinating because it's all based off of math and proportion and simple forms, and that's one of the biggest things that I'm so inspired by is simplicity. I've learned a lot about my own sense of style, especially like I just love color blocking. I love big blocks of just bold color. For some reason, I find it very comforting and very visually and aesthetically beautiful. But even when it comes to objects like this that are so inspired by wood and the wood grain and the mathematics that actually create the whole, when you actually break it down a little bit, especially this one, because it doesn't have too many crazy ornate details. It's just very structured, very simple, but it all works together and it just all comes together and creates this visually stunning piece, which is really awesome.
It really is.
And very exciting for me. I love it.
That leads me to my first question. Why did you choose this piece, or how did you choose this piece?
So I really wanted to discover more, especially about this piece, mainly because it's a very statuesque piece. So we've already done the Victorian sofa. We did the Sao Paulo chest, which was our last one, and the one before that was the slant front Chippendale desk. So this one was actually a really nice segue because of Chippendale, especially because the Chippendale desk really influenced Chippendale at the time when Chippendale was huge. I'm going to say Chippendale 30 more times in a row, Chippendale. But he, Thomas, I know him personally.
Went to school together?
Mr. Chippendale, he was, right? He was basically the one who wrote the initial book, the catalog of furniture, which is what we discovered in episode 2. And the two people that really were influenced by that at the time from Thomas Chippendale's catalog, then it really inspired Sheridan and Hepaway to do their own, which is then in turn what this piece is actually referencing a lot. So it's all that same time period. So they all of the pieces that you have on display at the museum, they all relate very nicely to one another, but are very, very different in their own particular ways, which is really cool too.
Yeah. Watching these videos and working with you on this program, and for the past year we've been working on it, and you've really changed the way I personally look at our collection and the furniture and the objects that we have, because I think I've told you this in the past, and I hate to admit this as a museum employee, but I would go through that gallery and just, that looks nice, and then walk through it. But now it has a whole new meaning. It has a whole new, it has a lot of impact. So thank you for doing that for me. I'm just going to pretend
thank you.
Done for me.
I appreciate that. It's always fascinating whenever it comes. Thank you very much, by the way. Whenever it comes to furniture on display at museums, when I was younger and would go to different museums and see furniture on display, my first initial thought was, these are really interesting, but I want to touch them. Like because I want to see what's in them. I want to see how they're used. And and how you can use them, because furniture, in comparison to either like a painting or a sculpture, something that is created for, it's a piece of art for art's sake to be viewed. And when it comes to furniture, it is still an artistry, but it's an artistry that is to be used, not just viewed. So it's always interesting putting on display things that were created for a physical intent of housing things or having you sit on them and things like that. So whenever you have these pieces that are, especially whenever we took a look at the Victorian sofa for the first one, first off, it was so fascinating whenever we brought it down, just from the little level that it's on, the little stage that it's on, just bringing it down showed a whole nother view because of how petite that sofa actually is. And also too, whenever we brought it down, both of us wanted to sit on it for sure. We weren't going to, but we really wanted to. Especially because okay.
I was gonna say, I've dubbed it the fainting couch because I really think that that's its purpose.
Pretty much, basically. I mean, practically, we are both shorter individuals, and to get into it, we would practically have to like flop onto it. So I could only imagine being like 6 foot tall, coming down to actually get down to the seat height, which was
absolutely.
So.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to another question. Remember, everybody, ask your questions. Ask about this piece, ask about previous pieces, ask Tony any questions. Don't ask me any questions. I'm not going to answer any.
I'm an open book. You can ask me absolutely anything. I don't get offended by anything. And especially last time, you're actually seeing me now as a boy. The last time I was in full drag because it was the premiere of Design Star, which is crazy. I can't believe that was already... Like, it really does. And that was only like a month?
Yeah.
No, 2 months. 2. Yes? 2.
March?
2. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we're in April.
No.
Yeah. It was March and April.
Yeah. Because our last episode was February.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What is time anymore? Yay! Nobody knows anymore.
Yes. All right. So let's get back to the questions. How did you become interested in the history of furniture?
Well, so I've always been interested in college. We had to take, frankly, in like grade school, my worst class was social studies. I didn't care about history, mainly because it was about people. And I was like, I don't really care about history. I just want to like be artsy fartsy and like prance around. I don't know. So I never understood like how to, it was all for me because it was being tested, kid tested and mother approved. I was not a fan of, I wasn't the best at studying. Mainly because I just didn't know how to, and studying history for me in grade school was very difficult. But then in high school, high school, and then into college. High school, I took art history, and I was like, this makes sense to me. Like it just, now it all is tying together, but it's a little bit more interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of like wars and whatever. I'm like, I know they've happened, but I don't really, whatever. Or government. I'm not like the, creme de la creme of knowing my knowledge of government. But when it came to like art history, I was like, this is much more interesting. And then in college, besides art history, I took a lot of the history of design and interior design, especially interior product design, graphic design, all of that. So that really fascinated me. And for me too, because I am someone who I just see things visually, three-dimensionally a lot of times. And I love to actually build things. When I see furniture or drapery or interiors of space or architecture overall, it excites me in crazy ways, and it just fascinates me how things are actually created. So for me, the history of the furniture, it creates a whole nother realm of love for it. And from doing these videos especially, it's because I get to really deep dive and focus in on just one particular piece of furniture and one particular time, and what was really happening during that time for all types of people, whether it's the rich, because especially when a lot of the pieces that are in any museum, for the most part, most of the furniture is going to be was created originally for more of the wealthy. But it's interesting to see what was going on during that time, where it was created, and not just the people that owned it, but also the people that were struggling at that time too, to really just get a sense of what that life was all about. So these couple of pieces have really given a lot more value to them, just to really soak up everything as much as I possibly can get into about a half an hour video without going too in depth, because sometimes it gets a little too crazy. But yeah, it's really interesting how everything is very related, and how a lot of the pieces still stem back to designs within like Europe and Great Britain especially, with Chippendale, Hepplewhite, and Sheridan. Everybody at this time period knows about those furniture pieces, especially because they were the first ones to really make furniture catalogs that could be replicated anywhere. So it's really interesting.
So are folks still making furniture catalogs today? Or is it a completely different
Yes. So there's different types of processes. So there's more being made today. It's interesting as you go from the 1800s to the 1900s, especially. One which we learned a lot. You can always go back and check out episode 1. I think it was episode 1. Ooh. And when the steam engine came into play, and the Industrial Revolution and everything of that nature, when things started to become more mass produced, it was a lot easier to create different designs that could easily be recreated and be a lot less expensive. So in this time period, very fine furniture was, a lot of times, it wasn't mass produced. It was produced one at a time, sometimes by one or two tradespeople, or people that had a couple dozen tradespeople who were all working for them too. The more well-known people definitely had a lot more hands to help fabricate a lot of different things. So it's very interesting, the creation of furniture and how the times have really changed. Because nowadays, I mean, you could go online and buy a piece of furniture. They didn't really have that back in the 1800s. So
Yeah. All right. Okay. What is your favorite era or style of American furniture?
So I actually snagged a little book. So a couple of references that I have. This was a class that I took in college, and this still is a great reference that I use all the time. It is a field guide to American houses. So this one, unsponsored. They have a ton of really, really cool information, especially dedicated to American home buildings. So it's really interesting. Once you, even just skimming through books like this, if you go out for a walk or for like a bike ride or something like that, and you just start to look at different parts and pieces and elements that each home possesses, not specifically needing to know, what era, what all of that sort of information, but just learning little bits of why buildings look the way that they look, and being able to spot different construction that is breaking the rules, versus the ones that are following the quote unquote rules. So it's really really interesting. But going back to the time period, so probably for me, the most inspirational era is a lot of the 1950s and 1960s, not just for interiors, it's kind of the whole realm and spectrum of design. So fashion, interior design, architectural design, graphic design, and everything and anything in between. So the 60s, the 50s I loved because it was a little bit more innocent, but still really unique colors and styles, and there was a kind of a strict code, especially for how you present yourself and how your furniture, the furniture of that time, was just very unique, and what we nowadays, I think a lot of people really are attracted to those time periods and that style of furniture. And then the 60s, the colors seem to change, become a little bit more vibrant, and really a lot, not as if I hate vibrant colors completely, but colors that were a lot more bold and in your face and expressive, with a lot of very, very clean lines. And again, kind of going back to that color blocking, which I love so much. So this is actually another great, lovely book, The Decorative Arts of the 60s. So this just gets into...
This down.
What's that?
I said I'm writing all of this down.
Oh, please do. I'll let you borrow them sometime.
All right.
But like, even there's the one page, it's like the first thing. So this one I love so much. Especially this image is one that I've referenced so many times. So this is just, I'm not in my camera. I always forget that the camera's on this side because I just, oh my goodness, hello. So this is one example of, this is a chandelier it's just so simplistic in its form, but because, so each of these, it's so interesting doing it backwards. Each of these, it's basically like a half circle, so a dome, and then there's a light bulb underneath. And the light bulb is actually covered, it's almost like dipped, basically, in a lot of times these might be specific light bulbs. I'm not 100% sure. I've never seen this. If anyone out there has this chandelier, let me know, because I would love to see this in person, but I have never yet. But the light basically comes around each of these. And so all of this, oh, there we go. All of these little reflections are just the light bulbs from above. So you just get this, it's all a play off of, it's just a really simple round form, but then the lighting is directed specifically so that it creates these new forms. And if each of these light bulbs was not covered in that base, you would just have this intense blow of lighting. But because the light is basically radiating off of the light bulb, but covered underneath, you get this sort of, basically like the Target logo. You get that round circle donut shape that reflects all down. So it just creates all of these really cool and unique shapes without actually having those specifically. It's just all based off of light and reflection, which I'm weirdly obsessed with. So I've been doing a lot of different work with lighting and bending different light, and doing some different things with film. So yeah, it excites me.
That's really cool. I can see why it's your favorite.
Right.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Getting to know you and just knowing your style little bits at a time. It makes sense.
I've learned to accept it over the years. I'm like, I don't, because I am very inspired by everything,
Mhm.
as a lot of designers are. I always say that there is no wrong. What do I say? There is no wrong answer when it comes to design.
Mhm.
No design is bad. Some doesn't function as well, and some isn't always everyone's preference, but that's kind of everything in life. Not everybody's going to love everything that you love. And when it comes to design, the best part about design, especially residential design, is that you can create your own rules within your space that
Mhm.
excites you, and design should excite you. And it doesn't have to stay stagnant. You can change things around, even if you're not purchasing new things. You can still use what you have and change things and have them give new life every time that you move them around. So, yeah.
That's excellent. Well, so you're leading us into the next question, which
Yes.
is, what is your least favorite era or style of American furniture?
I would say so. I wouldn't say least favorite, but I would say the earlier stages. So not dissing our current piece that we're talking
Right,
about,
right.
but
Okay.
it's not so much the pieces, because I love the pieces that came out of that era. I think they were still following a lot of rules. So whenever it came into the 50s and the 60s, they were kind of reinterpreting things and changing things. Things were becoming a little bit more graphic, more fashion was changing. It was being a little bit more daring, slowly but surely, and and people were slowly being able to express themselves a little bit more and create their own excitement. So initial early stages of American design is all based off of a lot of British styles, because most of the people that came to America were, I mean, no one was American. I mean, there was a lot happening during that time, to say the
Right,
least, in the early stages of American history. But
right. Those styles were already developed in another country.
yes, so they were basically just recreating, slowly reinterpreting, but it took a long time to reinterpret, and create their own. So, yeah. So even though I still love the furniture styles of and designs of the early American phase, it had already kind of been done.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fair. You're allowed to have that opinion.
But it's still really, really cool and interesting because of the history of it,
Mhm.
of why it was that. And all of that still exists. It's not as if those rules or that template that they were playing off of and starting their designs, and kind of reinterpreting the designs. Those same styles of design and furniture making and interiors and graphics, it's still a base for what a lot of everything is based off of today, even into the 50s and the 60s. They were taking a lot of those ideas, same exact ideas of proportion and scale and craftsmanship or craftspersonship, whatever. But I'm always somebody who catches myself because I hate like mailman or craftsman or all that sort of mumbo jumbo. That's why learning a little bit more about this one, especially, and diving into the architectural, the different orders that there are. It is interesting that back in the day that their gender roles were everywhere. That was what life was. If you
Right.
were male, you did this. If you were female, you did this. And it was the same thing even into architecture, where the Doric order was just very structured, and it was all based off of the idea of going to war or to battle. Things are very structured. It has to be put together. You're very stern. You're very strong. And then when it got into the Ionic order, it was starting to be a little bit more loose and curved and a little bit more feminine. Right. Whatever.
Right.
But
so very binary of them.
It's so binary. But at the end of the day, and it all stems back to, before architecture, it stems back to the body and how mathematically just a body, male or female, can all be based off of, like, everyone has proportions. So it's all based off of proportions, not so much human aspects, but just mathematical proportions. So there should be no gender. It should all just be based off of math.
Right.
Gender is math. So we're going to flip the script. Gender is no longer a thing. It's all based off of math. So
yeah, my numbers are 5 and 0 now.
I love that for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I love it.
Your name should no longer say Mona Wiley, she/her. It'll say 550. Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
50. Perfect. Yeah. I love that.
We're throwing out the binary. When I saw that, I had remembered learning about that in college when we were talking about the ancient Greek and Roman architecture, and it completely triggered a reaction that I had also learning about it, where I was like, what is happening? Why?
Right.
Which kind of prompted me to think of a question for you. Yeah. Is this something that's still used now? Is it common practice to use gendered architecture or to I guess gauge things based on that old style?
It depends. It depends on the person. I think one of the biggest things that I really try to do, just as a person, not as a designer, is whenever we're all kind of trained to have this idea of colors being something specific and based off of gender, which all goes back to the ideas of the different orders of architecture. It's like, this is a long-winded hundreds of years of people putting gender onto different things. So nowadays, why gender things? If you know better and think about things differently, even especially down to the basics of color, of blues and pinks. That's the most simplistic thing. Blue does not mean it's masculine. Pink does not mean it's feminine, and it's a color. So if you're inspired, if a color sparks an interest or a fascination or an excitement, or any sort of feeling, I think when it comes to design in general and the arts in general, it should evoke some sort of feeling, some sort of emotion. And if that emotion, if you're drawn to that specific emotion, go for it. There's no reason why you can or can't do something. I think that's one of the biggest things over the years of working with other designers or different clients or things like that, of people having these ideas in the back of their mind of you can or can't do something. And basically, especially when it comes to your own space and things that you are attracted to, you shouldn't ever say can't or think that you can't, because there's always a way that you can. The more you know. Right,
I was just thinking, we need that.
Right. It's always so interesting too, because everyone has a critique for anything, and that is human nature, and that's the way that we're created, and that's fine. But just because your critique is this way does not mean that it's going to be critiqued Or what? Just because you are thinking one way doesn't mean that it has no relevance or it has no importance to someone else who's going to reinterpret it in a different way. So that's kind of the one really exciting point about any sort of design or artistry is it's constantly reinterpreted. And that reinterpretation is what keeps it exciting. And that's the best part about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a great lesson we're learning.
I've been sometimes when I go onto a rant, when that was actually a surprisingly non-long-winded rant. Sometimes I just go off, and I can tell that people are waiting for me to just stop because I just keep going because I'm very passionate about just doing things that make you happy, especially. And for me, especially, color is very much something that makes me happy and excited and sparks interest. It doesn't always have to be something that people are afraid of or something that you should worry about what other people are thinking that, oh, people won't like that or whatever. Do it.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, who else is going to? So take a chance.
Very true. Very true. You heard it here, folks. Take a chance. All right. We have one more question that came in through the chat. Maggie said, you make learning about furniture and history so much more fun. Thank you for sharing the book that you shared earlier. What other resources would you recommend for someone if they wanted to learn more about furniture?
Let's see. So definitely. So I'm someone who I love watching videos of different craftspeople creating things because it's very inspiring for me because I just love to see the effort that goes into how things are fabricated. Also, too, that's a good question. There's a lot of different videos on. I'm a big YouTube watcher. I love just kind of getting into realms of different things when it comes to history and furniture overall. Plus, there are other different local artists around that sometimes you can find and just to see their space in person is a really cool thing to experience because it will ignite certain things of inspiration, especially to be able to talk to actual furniture, not just furniture designers, but people who are actually fabricating furniture as well. So I'm someone who likes to build. I would not consider myself a full-blown fabricator. I like to make things my own, but I love people who they have a full-blown studio, a woodworking studio, or any type of fabrication. I find it so interesting and inspiring to really see exactly all the tools that are really used and how they use them to really make that final piece.
Yeah. So the internet, YouTube, talk to some folks, and I'm a huge proponent of the public library. So
and yes, the library.
Go to the library.
There's also pretty much, this is actually another book. I don't think I showed this. So this is Architecture, Form, Space, and Order. This is another book that I got from college. So
there you go. Okay.
And a lot of these base books, if you're really into furniture, architecture, design, it's all within the same realm. But a lot of these types of books, especially when it's all based off of the form and overall orders, it is really interesting because a lot of times within the first couple of pages, it just references the past. And it starts out, it is all a history lesson at the end of the day because it starts out with the base orders and overall structures and columns. I don't know if you can see that because that light is there. Sort of. So, oh, there, hello again. So it all, like, this is just in the first couple of pages, and it's all about columns and how things are actually ordered. And from a floor plan, wow, I keep moving it in the wrong direction. Even though virtual has been a thing, I still am always like, wait, where's the, I can't, I'm like 300 years old. So, but it all starts out with the same base, and then how it's always fascinating to really see how things are then reinterpreted. So this floor plan is basically the same premise, but they just skewed it. And they kind of created these very weird types of angles and curves. So it's still based on the same premise of how a space functions, but they took that overall base and then they just reinterpreted it. So it all stems back to those initial designs, which is so fascinating because those initial designs are literally like before the dinosaur. Not really, but they were
Dinosaurs
from,
were using them to build caves.
they are completely so stupid.
I like
But
this story,
basically,
though.
yeah.
I think we could create a whole narrative of early dinosaur architecture and design.
I think so. That would be so much fun.
Next, with love of furniture.
Right? Yeah. Awesome.
All right, so I've been so happy with this program. I'm so glad we came up with this, that we had this conversation about it, and we made it come true.
Me too.
So For the Love of Furniture is going to be taking a very small hiatus, and then we're going to come back hopefully in the new year with something exciting and reimagined. But so I really want to thank you for working with us and taking the time and all the research and everything you've done and just all the fun we've had doing this together.
We have had a lot of fun. It has been an experience. It's been so much fun. Thank you for having me over this past year now, which is crazy. But yeah, it's been so fun and so interesting researching everything and doing all of these videos and being able to touch some of the furniture while wearing gloves. But just to be able to do that has always been a dream of mine, to go into a museum and actually touch furniture. Because in some of my furniture, design history classes, we would watch videos of, older people who were just talking about the furniture and touching it, and I was always jealous of them because they were touching, hundreds of year old pieces as if they were brand new. And I was like, what? I want to do that. So you made my dream come true.
Well, thank you. We're going to also give a shout out to Doug Evans, our Director of Collections and Exhibition Management, for allowing us to do that. So Doug, thank you very much.
Yes.
A thank you to everybody that joined us tonight, and definitely check the museum's website. We have a ton of programs coming up. So yeah, stick around with us. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Thank you.
Good night.